My business partner of 7 years shook my hand, in front of our entire staff. The morning I signed over my half of the company to him. 8 hours later I found him in my apartment with my fiancée. My family told me I was overreacting. I walked out of that apartment, drove to a parking garage on 5th, sat in my car until 4 a.m., and started making a list of every single thing I was going to do next. That list saved my life. 3 years later, my mother called me crying, said my brother needed help, said the business was collapsing, said everything had fallen apart. I was sitting on the back porch of a house I built, in Asheville, North Carolina, drinking coffee I made myself, watching fog come off the Blue Ridge. I said, that sounds like his problem. And I meant it. Let me go back to the beginning. My name is Tatum Wells. I was 33. My fiancée was Noreen Gallagher. Together 6 years, engaged 14 months. We met at a networking event in Charlotte, back when I thought those things were worth attending. She worked in marketing. I was 3 years into a construction startup I had co-founded with my older brother Knox. The company was called Meridian Build. We built software that automated permit tracking and contractor scheduling for mid-sized developers. By year 4 we had $1.2 million in annual recurring revenue, 11 clients and 2 junior developers on payroll. Knox handled sales and client relationships. I handled product and operations. That was the deal. I was the one who actually understood how the system worked. Knox was the one who could make anyone in a room feel like they were the only person who mattered. Between the two of us, we had built something real. The engagement was set for an October wedding. Venue booked in the Smoky Mountains. 73 guests. Total cost, $31,000. I had paid $22,000 of it from my personal savings. Noreen's parents contributed the rest. The rehearsal dinner was the Thursday before. The ceremony was Saturday afternoon. Thursday night ended at 10:30 p.m. Noreen went to her parents' house to stay the night. Her idea. She said she wanted that last night, of being their daughter before she became my wife. I thought it was one of the more beautiful things she had ever said. I drove back to our apartment alone, packed what I needed for the hotel room, where I would spend Friday night and Saturday morning, and left her a note on the kitchen counter. Not something long. Just, tomorrow I get to marry you. I've been looking forward to this specific day since the second week I knew you. I left the apartment at 11:15 p.m. I forgot my laptop charger. The ceremony was 2 days away, but I knew myself. I would need it Saturday morning. I turned around, parked back in the garage, took the elevator up. I used my key. The hallway light was on. The bedroom door was open about 8 inches. I heard voices, not the television. Voices, Knox and Noreen in our bedroom, in our bed. I stood in the doorway for what felt like a full minute but was probably 4 seconds. Noreen saw me first. She said my name, just Tatum. Flat. Like a statement. Knox turned his head and looked at me the way people look when they have rehearsed an apology. In their head 100 times. But forgot every word of it the moment it mattered. I walked to the desk, unplugged the laptop charger, coiled the cable, put it in my bag and left. I did not slam the door. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw anything. I sat in the parking garage for 4 hours and 40 minutes. I made my list. By 4 a.m. I had 17 items on it. Item 1 was do not contact anyone until you know what you want. Item 2 was, call Struce in the morning. Item 3 was review the shareholder agreement. Item 4 was, do not go back to that apartment. The rest I won't go into here, but I got through all 17 before I drove to the hotel. At 6 a.m. my phone had 42 notifications. 19 missed calls. Knox 8 times. Noreen 11 times. My mother Gloria 4 times. My father Raymond twice. Noreen's mother 3 times. My friend and the only groomsman I actually trusted, a man named Bo, twice. One text from Knox, sent at 11:52 p.m. He said, I know what you saw, please call me. We need to talk before you do anything. This is not what it looks like. I read that twice. 8 years building something together. Side by side in a 2-person office for the first 3 years. Eating takeout containers over keyboards. Cold calling developers who hung up on us. Rewriting the intake system 4 times because it kept breaking under load. 8 years of that, and the night before I was supposed to get married. The man I built it with told me it was not what it looked like. I texted Bo. Not Knox, not Noreen, not my parents, Bo. I said, I need you to go to the apartment and pack a bag for me. Clothes for a week. My external hard drive from the desk drawer. My folder of personal documents in the file cabinet. 3rd drawer down. Leave everything else. He responded in under 2 minutes. He said, already knew something was wrong. On my way. I did not ask how he knew. I found out later that Knox had called him at midnight. Tried to get Bo to find me. Told him the whole story hoping Bo would run interference. Bo had listened. Said nothing. Waited for me. When Bo got to the hotel room at 9 a.m. with my bag, he set it down and said, tell me what you need. I said the wedding is off. Can you handle the calls? He said, already started. Your venue coordinator's number was in the event group chat. I emailed her at 7. I said there's a $400 cancellation penalty on the catering contract. He said let Knox and Noreen sort it. They made the mess. I said my mother is going to lose her mind, he said. She already is. She's called me 3 times. That was the last personal conversation I had about any of this for 6 days. I turned off my phone, used the hotel business center, and emailed my attorney Strauss, a man who had been handling Meridian Build's contracts since year 2. I laid out what I needed: a review of my shareholder agreement, an assessment of my buyout options, and evaluation of my equity stake. Strauss responded within the hour. He said, "Come in Monday, bring everything." The wedding was officially canceled at noon on Friday. 73 guests notified. Some had already driven in. My college roommate had flown in from Portland. Noreen's aunt had come from London. People who had booked hotels 2 months out were standing in a lobby in Gatlinburg, with gift bags and no ceremony to attend. My mother called Bo 16 times that Friday. She told him Knox was devastated. She told him Noreen was hysterical. She told him I was throwing away my family over something that could be worked through. She told him the 2 of them had made a terrible mistake, but I needed to come home and talk it out. Because that is what families do. That Friday night, Knox somehow got the hotel name and called the front desk asking for my room. I had checked in under Bo's name. The front desk told Knox there was no guest by my name. He tried twice more, nothing. Monday morning I met with Strauss. We spent 4 hours going through the Meridian Build shareholder agreement. Knox and I were equal partners, 50-50. The agreement had a standard buyout clause triggered by material breach of fiduciary duty or a voluntary exit. Strauss said, "If you can document that Knox took actions to undermine your interest in the company or used company resources in ways that harmed you, you may have grounds for a breach claim. That changes the buyout math significantly." I told him I needed to think about it. He said, "Take a week. Don't communicate with Knox about the business until we talk again." I said understood. That same Monday I withdrew $11,000 from the joint checking account Noreen and I shared. Left her half. Called the bank and closed my name off the account. Moved my direct deposit. Canceled the shared credit card. Wednesday I gave notice at the apartment. 6 months left on the lease. The landlord let me out for 2 months penalty. I paid it and considered it cheap. By Thursday I had moved what I owned into a storage unit, a truck bed and 2 SUV loads, clothes, tools, the external hard drive, a cast iron skillet my grandfather gave me when I turned 25, a box of books, my road bike. That was it. 6 of a life in a 10 to 15 storage unit, and 3/4 of it still had space. Friday I drove to Asheville, 4 hours west. I had been there once for a long weekend, and remembered thinking it was the kind of city where a person could disappear and not feel bad about it. I rented a room in a house near the River Arts District. $480 a month. Shared kitchen. Landlord named Edgar who asked no questions. I paid 3 months in advance. My mother got my new number 2 weeks later. I still do not know exactly how. My best guess is she called Bo enough times that he felt guilty and gave it to her. Though he has denied it every time I've brought it up, and I believe him. So maybe it was the phone company, maybe something leaked. She called on a Wednesday evening. I was eating dinner alone, at my kitchen table. She said, "Tatum, please don't hang up." I said, "I'm listening." She said, "Your brother is a wreck. He has not slept in 2 weeks. He is calling me every day. He needs his brother." I said he needed his brother before he got into bed with my fiancée. She said, "He knows what he did was wrong, he has said that. But you just disappeared. You didn't talk to anyone, you didn't give anyone a chance to." I said, "A chance to what, Mom? Explain it?" "There's nothing to explain." I walked into my own apartment the night before my wedding, and saw my brother in my bed with a woman I was marrying in 16 hours. There is no version of that sentence that gets better with more information. She said, "He is your family," I said. "He was my business partner. He was supposed to be my best man. He gave a toast at the rehearsal dinner. He stood in front of 73 people and said I was the most reliable person he had ever known. And then he drove to my apartment." She was quiet. I said, "Do not give this number to Knox. If he calls from a number I don't recognize, I will block every number in the area code." My father Raymond called the next morning. He said, "Son, I'm not going to pretend what your brother did was okay, but I need you to think about what you're doing to this family by cutting everyone off." I said, "Dad, I didn't cut anyone off. I left a situation that was making me sick and I went somewhere else to get better. That's not punishment. That's survival." He said, "Your mother is not sleeping. She's in the middle of this every single day." I said, "She doesn't have to be. Knox made a choice, and now he lives with it. That's not my job to manage." He said, "The business," I said, "the business is being handled by my attorney." That's the only conversation I'm prepared to have about Meridian Build right now. If Knox wants to discuss the shareholder agreement, he can call Strauss. He said, "Are you coming back?" I said, "I am back. I'm here. This is where I live now." He didn't have an answer for that. We hung up. I changed my number 2 days later. New number. 3 people had it: Bo Strauss and my landlord Edgar. Asheville is a city that rewards people who show up ready to work. I got a job inside of 10 days. project coordinator at a regional development firm called Hargrove & Sons. $41,000 a year, less than half my previous income, but they had projects across 4 states and the work was hands-on in a way I needed. I managed subcontractor schedules, permit timelines, punch lists. I was good at it. My direct supervisor, a man named Vincent, told me at the end of my 3rd week, "You think 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Where did you come from?" I said, "Charlotte. I'm not going back." He said, "Works for me." While I was learning a new city and sleeping on a mattress on a floor for the first 6 weeks, the situation Charlotte was coming apart in ways that Bo kept me informed of. Not because I asked him to. Bo is the kind of person who believes you deserve to know the truth, even when you would rather not. And I have never once disagreed with him on that. 2 months after I left, Knox and Noreen were together. Official. My parents were having them over for Sunday dinners. My mother had, according to Bo, cried when she found out they were a couple now, but not from sadness. Relief. Like everyone could stop walking on eggshells now that the awkward part of my absence had been resolved. 3 months after I left, Strauss completed the shareholder valuation. My equity stake in Meridian Build was worth $340,000 based on revenue, client contracts and growth trajectory. Strauss filed a formal demand letter, citing Knox's conduct and invoking the buyout clause. Knox's attorney pushed back. We went back and forth for 11 weeks. Knox wanted to pay out at a discounted rate, citing my voluntary abandonment of duties. Strauss said abandonment requires notice and an opportunity to cure, which Knox had not provided. We settled at $298,000. Not the full valuation, but close enough. Strauss took his fee. I netted $261,000, and I signed the paperwork on a Tuesday afternoon in a conference room on the 3rd floor of a building in Asheville I had never been to before. I shook no one's hand. 4 months after I left, Noreen was pregnant. Bo told me on a Thursday. I sat with that for a long time, not because I wanted her back. Because I had told Noreen on our 2nd anniversary, at a restaurant in uptown Charlotte where they knew our order before we sat down, that I wanted 2 kids, that the first thing I would teach them was how to read a blueprint. That I had already thought about what I would call a son. I told her the name. A family name. My grandfather's name. Lorne. She had laughed and said it was the most old-fashioned name she had ever heard and she loved it. 4 months and 1 week after I left, Bo texted to tell me Noreen and Knox had announced the pregnancy at a family dinner. My mother had cried again, the happy kind. My father had refilled everyone's wine glass. And somewhere in that dinner, the baby name came up. They had chosen Lorne. I put my phone in my kitchen drawer and did not take it out for 3 days. I am not going to pretend that did not break something. It did. Not because of Noreen, not because of Knox, but because of what it meant. That the most private thing I had shared with her. The name I had carried for years. The name I said out loud for the first time in a restaurant, where the waitstaff knew our order, had traveled from that table directly into the life she was building with the person who had destroyed mine. There is a specific kind of theft that has nothing to do with money. And that was it. When I took my phone back out of the drawer, I had 31 messages I had not read. I deleted them all without opening them and went to work. 6 months after I left, Knox left Meridian Build to Noreen's brother, to manage on a contract basis, and announced he was opening a restaurant. Not a bar, not a food truck. A full sit-down restaurant in the South End neighborhood of Charlotte, which is one of the most competitive restaurant corridors on the East Coast. He had no food service experience. He had a great personality and access to my parents' home equity line of credit, which they opened for $95,000 to help him fund the build-out and first 6 months of operations. My mother co-signed. I know this because Bo told me, and because I had spent enough years working in construction and development to understand exactly what a $95,000 built budget gets you in South End Charlotte. Not enough. The space alone runs $8,000 to $12,000 a month in rent. A kitchen build-out to code is another $60,000 to $90,000 minimum. Knox was starting undercapitalized before he opened the door. 9 months after I left, I bought into a small residential renovation project. With Vincent, my supervisor at Hargrove. He had a duplex in West Asheville he had been sitting on, needed a renovation partner, liked how I worked. I put in $18,000. We split the labor costs. I managed the subs. 6 months later we sold it for $312,000. My return, $27,400. 1 year after I left, Meridian Build lost its 2 largest clients. Knox had been managing the relationships personally, whilst Noreen's brother ran operations. The clients left because response times degraded, and the platform had not been updated in 8 months. Not the platform I had built and maintained for 6 years. Without me maintaining it, it started to show. Bo forwarded me a LinkedIn post from one of the clients, a developer named Hartwell, who Mesmitz's commercial firm in the Carolinas. He said, and I am paraphrasing, "We made the difficult decision to leave Meridian Build after a year of declining support. If anyone knows of a platform that tracks permits and subcontractor timelines, well, reach out. I called Hartwell from my cell phone. Not Bo's. My own, he answered. I said, this is Tatum Wells, I built Meridian Build, he said. I know who you are. What happened over there? I said I left. I'm building something new. He said, when can we talk? 14 months after I left, I had incorporated my own company, Apex, Field Solutions. Permit tracking, contractor scheduling, project coordination, the same core product rebuilt cleaner from the ground up on better architecture. Hartwell was my first client. Then 2 of his referrals. Then a developer out of Raleigh, who had heard about me through a Hargrove contact. By the end of month 14, I had 4 clients, $180,000 in annual contract value, and 1 part-time developer I had hired from a boot camp in Asheville named Quincy, who was better than anyone Knox, and I had hired in the first 3 years of Meridian Build. I also met someone. Her name is Vera. Wait, no. I need a different name because I won't use one that carries someone else's story. Her name is Paige. No, that one's taken too. Her name is Marin. I met Marin at a planning commission public hearing in Buncombe County. She was there representing a nonprofit affordable housing developer. I was there tracking a permit for a Hargrove project. She asked me a question about the county's variance process, and I gave her a 15-minute answer she probably didn't ask for. She stayed for all of it. After the meeting she said, you know a lot about something most people find aggressively boring. I said it's not boring if you understand what it controls. She said, buy me coffee and explain that. I did. 18 months after I left, Knox's restaurant was failing. Bo told me the numbers. Covers were down 40% from projections. The kitchen manager had quit. And Knox had taken out a personal loan for $28,000 against a credit card portfolio to cover payroll for 2 months. My parents had already advanced another $14,000 beyond the original $95,000. Tapping a secondary savings account my mother had kept separately for 20 years. 20 months after I left, the restaurant closed. 14 months of operation. Vendors were owed $41,000. Knox could not pay it. My parents were on the hook because my mother had co-signed on 2 of the supply contracts. My father cashed $54,000 from his 401(n)(a) early, taking the penalty to cover the vendor debts and avoid a lawsuit. He was 63 years old and had just paid a $5,400 early withdrawal penalty on retirement savings he had taken 30 years to accumulate to clean up a debt my brother created. Noreen had Lorne 6 months after the restaurant closed. She moved back to her parents' house. She and Sox were not together anymore. The thing that was exciting enough to destroy a life was not, it turned out, stable enough to survive 14 months of a struggling restaurant and a newborn. 23 months after I left, Knox moved back into my parents' house. Into my old bedroom. Bo told me this on a Sunday morning, and I sat with it for a long time. Not out of satisfaction. Out of something more complicated. I thought about the room. The shelf above the desk where I had kept a row of paperback novels. And a cheap globe I had bought at a garage sale when I was 12. Because I wanted to know where everything was. I thought about Knox in that room, in that bed, 36 years old, the restaurant gone, the company gutted, the baby with a woman who had left him. I felt something I did not expect. I felt tired. 2 years after I left, Apex Field Solutions had $620,000 in annual contract value, 6 clients, and 3 full-time employees, including Quincy, who was now my head of product and worth every dollar I was paying him. I had moved out of the rented room and into a house I leased myself in North Asheville. 2 bedrooms, a yard with a fig tree I did not plant but felt responsible for. Marin had a key. My mother tried to reach me again around the 26th month. She had gotten a number from somewhere. I suspected a mutual family connection. A cousin of mine named Terry, who had always been closer to my mother than to me. She called on a Sunday morning. I answered because it was a number I didn't recognize. And I had a subcurrent I was waiting to hear from. She said, Tatum, it's Mom. Please. I said I'm here. She said I need to tell you things are very bad. Knox is at the house. He hasn't been working steadily. Your father's retirement is almost gone. We have a second lien on the house now, between the original mortgage and the HELOC. The payments are $3,800 a month and your father's income since he cut to part-time is $2,100. We are 4 months from losing the house. I said, I know, Mom. Bo has kept me updated the whole time. She went quiet for a moment. I said, I know about the $95,000. I know about the $14,000 after that. I know about Dad's 401(a). I've known everything. She said, then you know how serious it is. I said, I do. She said, we need your help. We're going to lose the house. Your father is 63 and he has almost nothing left. We need you to come home. I let the silence sit for a few seconds. Then I said, Mom, the morning after I found Knox and Noreen in my apartment, I had $11,000 in a checking account, a truck, a storage unit, and a city I had visited once for a long weekend. I did not call you for help. I did not ask Dad to co-sign anything. I did not take money that belonged to someone else and spend it on something I had no business doing. I put my head down and I built something, and I did it alone, because that was the only option I had. She said that's different. I said how? She was quiet. I said, Knox is 36 years old, and he is living in my childhood bedroom while your house goes into foreclosure around him. I'm not saying this to be cruel, I'm saying it because it's the truth. The reason your house is in foreclosure is not bad luck. It's a decade of choices. And the most important choice you made was deciding that Knox's problems were your problems to solve. They're not. They never were. They're his. She said, he is your brother, I said. He handed me a pen at the rehearsal dinner and asked me to sign a card for the wedding venue's guest registry. He looked me in the eye and shook my hand. He stood in front of 70 people and gave a speech about what kind of man I was. And 8 hours later he was in my apartment with my fiancée. He is not my brother. He is someone I grew up with who made a choice. She was crying now. I recognized the specific sound of it. The kind of crying that has been going on for a long time and stopped being about any one thing. I said, I'm not going to come home. I'm not going to pay the mortgage. I am not the solution to this problem, she said. Then what are we supposed to do, I said. Sell the house before the bank takes it. Whatever equity is left, use it to rent something you can actually afford on your income. Tell Knox to get a second job and get his own place. That is what you do. That is literally what I did when I had nothing. She said, we've been in that house for 28 years. I said, I know, Mom. I'm sorry. And I was. That part was real. There was no satisfaction in it. 28 years is a long time to live somewhere, and the weight of losing it is not nothing, regardless of how it happened. My father had mowed that lawn every Saturday morning from April to October my entire childhood. My mother had a tomato garden in the back left corner that she replanted every spring. None of that is nothing. But none of it was mine to fix. My father called 3 days later from a number I didn't know. I picked up. He said, son. I said, hey, Dad. He said, I'm not going to ask you to come back. I understand why you won't. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I've been thinking about what to say for 2 years and that's what I've got. I'm sorry. I should have said when this started that what Knox did was wrong. I should have said it the night it happened. I didn't. I don't have a good reason. I think I was scared of losing him, and I convinced myself I could fix it by keeping everyone together, and all I did was run out of money and still lose both of you. I was quiet for a moment. He said, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know, I said. I hear you, Dad. He said, are you okay? Are you actually okay? I said, yeah, I really am. He said, good, that's what matters. We sat on the phone for a minute without talking. That might sound awkward, but it wasn't. It was the most honest thing that had happened between us in 3 years. He said, is there someone? Are you with someone? I said, yeah, her name is Marin, she's good. He said, good, hold on to that. I said, I intend to. He said, I'll let you go. I said, take care of yourself, Dad. He hung up. I sat on the back porch for a long time after that. The mountains were doing that thing they do in October in Asheville where the light turns a specific shade of amber that doesn't exist anywhere else I've been. Marin was inside making dinner. She had moved most of her things into the house by then, and the kitchen smelled like something she was making from a recipe her grandmother had written on a note card in 1987. And she had kept in a manila envelope all this time. I thought about that I had left Noreen on the kitchen counter the night this all started. Tomorrow I get to marry you. I thought about driving back for the charger. I thought about the 4 hours and 40 minutes in the parking garage and the list with 17 items. And how item 3 was review the shareholder agreement. Because, even then, even in that parking garage at 2 a.m., part of me knew exactly what came diagnostiski. My parents' house sold the following spring. Bo told me $284,000. After the mortgage balance and the HELOC payoff, they cleared $22,000. 28 years. And they walked out with $22,000 because everything else had gone into Knox's restaurant. Knox's debt. Knox's share of the Sunday dinners. My parents kept setting a place for at the table, even after there was nothing left to serve. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb north of Charlotte. My father went back to full-time at the company he had semi-retired from. He was 63 and starting over, which is a thing I understood better than most. Knox was in a studio apartment, working 2 jobs, warehouse days, delivery nights, sending $500 a month to Noreen for Lorne, the rest going to a credit card debt that would take him 8 years to clear at his current rate. The restaurant had not just failed. It had compounded. Noreen was raising Lorne at her parents' place and working at a marketing agency in Ballantine. The name Lorne, my grandfather's name, the name I had said out loud for the first time at a restaurant where they knew our order. That name was now attached to a 3-year-old boy who would grow up not knowing any of this. That part I had made a kind of peace with. Not a clean peace, the kind you arrive at when you run out of energy to carry something that isn't yours anymore. Apex Field Solutions crossed $1 million in annual contract value 18 months ago. We have 9 clients now, and Quincy just hired a second developer. I bought a house in North Asheville last year. A craftsman bungalow with a covered porch and a woodshop in the detached garage I use on weekends. Because working with my hands is the one thing that has never stopped making sense to me. I put $90,000 down. The mortgage is $40 a month on a 30-year at 6.2%. It is mine in the only way that matters. I built the down payment myself, dollar by dollar, project by project, from a parking garage at 4 a.m. and a list of 17 things I knew I had to do. Marin and I got engaged last March. No big venue, no 73 guests. We drove to Brevard on a Saturday, hiked graveyard fields, and I asked her at the top of a waterfall, with a ring I had designed, with a jeweler in the River Arts District, who had taken 3 months to get it right. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We are getting married in November, small, 20 people, people who have actually shown up. I kept the note I had left Noreen on the kitchen counter that night. I do not know why I kept it. I had already left before she got home and I never went back. So I don't know how it ended up with my things, but it did. It was in the box I packed the external hard drive into. Maybe I had an extra copy. Maybe I had written two. I found it 3 months into Asheville when I was unpacking. Unfolded it, read it, folded it back up. I kept it in the desk drawer for a long time. Last winter I took it out and threw it away. Not out of anger. It had just been there long enough. The night of the parking garage used to feel like the worst night of my life. Now it just feels like the night everything got clarified. Every item on the list. Every dollar I didn't spend on things that couldn't be fixed. Every mile between Charlotte and Asheville. All of it clarifying. My mother said everything fell apart. But that's not quite right. Some things fell apart. The things that were already hollow. The things that looked solid because people had agreed not to look too closely. When Knox sat down in that bed, he didn't just betray me. He removed the pressure that had been holding everything, in a shape it was never actually built to hold. And what came down was always going to come down. I was just the last one to see it. I'm the one who left, which made me the one who survived. And from a porch in Asheville, with a view of mountains, I am still not used to, and a woman who asks hard questions and means them in a company I built from a parking garage at 4 a.m. From here, I can say that with no performance and no bitterness. Just fact. Some clarity costs everything. This one was worth it. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're in your own parking garage right now, making your own list, keep going. You're further along than you think. Thank you for watching.